Good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure for me to be here today. It's my first time in Turkey, and I'm not realizing I'm here right away because I arrived last night at 3 a.m. So I want to interact with you more to realize what are your concerns and what are your things. I want to thank the organizing committee for inviting me, and also my colleague Pilar Rico from the city in Madrid, that she couldn't come and she thought that I could. And I say, well, I can't because it was yesterday in France. But somebody of this team working in this Open Science National Conference made the magic to have me here, and I'm very thankful for that. I want to talk about open science in Spain, but also what I want to talk is about the challenges and initiatives that we have in the European context, because I have to congratulate you guys because it's your 7th National Open Science Conference. I was yesterday in France in the 2nd National Open Science Conference, and France has a national policy. So what is better, to have an implementation plan or a full-fledged policy? I was just thinking yesterday in the plane about this, because in Spain we don't have a full-fledged policy, but perhaps sometimes the willingness of the country to do things, to belong to open air, to join. Look at you, you are a bunch of people that you are interested in all these things. So let's think about what is the challenges of implementation open science. In general, I always say that I can't talk about open science with many hats, because I'm a librarian by training, myself. I'm a researcher. I'm currently running 2 projects at the European level, Fair is Fair and Fair for Health, and my research is on metadata for and research infrastructures, digital libraries, etc. So I'm also the new European Open Science Policy Platform Chair. I can also talk about open science as a research data Alliance Ambassador. I said before I used to be a faculty member, a researcher. Now I'm a champion, an ambassador, an advocate, but still I'm a researcher. And also I can talk to you about the national open science policies, because I'm belonging to the 2 groups in Spain that they are leading this thing. But also I can talk about my institution, because I'm the Deputy Vice President for Research Policies in my university, which is where I have my real jurisdiction. I will tell you, because it was the will of the organization, that I focus in Spain. But when I focus in Spain and at the national level, because you can't compare, this is very useful in general. We compare, we say we are better than the French, but than the French, we are worse than the Turkish, and we have to compare all the time national approaches, because it's a way that we motivate each other. Well, the plan of my presentation will be something like my overview of open science, because Paula did hers, and it was terrific, but I will just approach which is the context in the EU for the open science. What are the challenges, and the main challenge, which is the manage a complex change, because every change needs an effort. Even if you go to a better house, you have to make the effort of a moving. So even if you go to better science, you have to make the effort of the transition. And this cultural change is really, really challenging. And also we'll talk about motivators of will, because they are the main issues that they make things happen in science and in researchers and in universities. And also I would like to talk about implementation, because since I'm the chair of the Open Science Policy Platform, I'm resigned to make yet another declaration. I think we have enough declarations. We all agree upon declarations and recommendations. We do really need practical commitments for implementation. So I'm just creating 2 hashtags in Twitter, and instead of yet another declaration, I use PCI, which is a practical commitment for implementation. So let's practice open science, and let's try to do this. And also, I'm telling you this thing because this is my willingness to transmit in the policy in Spain, to transmit in the policy in my institution. For example, in my institution, I'm not working in a full-fledged policy in a mandate. I'm working from a bottom-up implementation, and creating research groups that they are fully committed with open science, because they are going to be exemplar for the others. So that's what I really believe. This is the main context that we have in Europe. Probably you have heard about the responsible research and innovation, where openness and transparency are integral components of the research and innovation process. As a part of this, open access is one of the key issues of responsible research and innovation, along with public engagement, with gender equality, governance, etc. And also we have this kind of badge that the universities got, which is the Human Research Excellence Research Award. It's a badge in the university, but it's an award that commits people to belong to the responsible research and innovation when you contract human resources, or when you have these newcomers in science. So, in general, there are many definitions. Paola mentioned one that is lovely, that in general terms, and in your presentation you also have umbrellas. People think that the open science is an umbrella term that covers a lot of things and below. But when I started thinking about my own umbrella, I made my own umbrella, and I realized that what I needed was a mushroom, because an umbrella wasn't enough, because I need roots. Actually, I made a biologically incorrect mushroom, because the mushrooms, if there is a mycologist in the room, they will kill me, because the mushrooms, they don't have roots. But my perception of the open science has roots. We need research integrity, because we don't talk enough about research integrity, and it's a key issue. We need research infrastructures. Paolo has told you about EOS, which is the main data infrastructure for the European open science. And also we need to talk about the reward system, which is another root, and is the cornerstone and the bottleneck that make open science happen. And in my perception, citizen science, the participation of the citizen, is transversal to open science. I cannot believe open science without the participation of everybody. Paola was talking about inclusiveness and equity, which is important, the access of the information, but also the participation of the society. Because if not, in the universities, we are machines of making papers. But what we have to do is become the research system in a machine to change the world. So, and in this context, what the mushroom grows, what the open science grows, is in the biggest context, in the soil of responsible research and innovation. This is my perception, but it's very funny because I found my own mushroom became again an umbrella. So somebody says that this is adapted from Eva Mendez, but they made my roots in research infrastructure, research evaluation, and research integrity something around the umbrella. So different representations are there. But this is probably another representation of what open science means. Generosity in science. That means diversity, for sure. That means fairness, not only fair data, but fairness in the real meaning of fairness, collaboration, openness, sharing, giving and service. Well, in the comparison that Paola made, is something like she used selfish, and I use generosity because it's the contrary. And because nowadays the system, the scientific system, and I believe in this in my own career, every 6 years in Spain you have to evaluate your research performance. And I feel pressed because of the system. I have to publish what they told me to publish and not be a generous open scientist, because the system doesn't motivate you to be like that. But I think the key of happiness, the new impact factor is going to be the happiness factor. And I say that the key of happiness in general in life is generosity. The key of the evolution of science and make the researchers not only a career and a burden to make publications is to be generous. When you change the world, you probably will be happier than when you publish a paper, yet another paper. this is the status that we have. We have a lot of recommendations. Here you have the 4 previous high-level expert reports about next generation metrics, providing researchers with the skills, careers fully acknowledging with open science, and the ALEA Code of Conduct of Integrity in Europe. And also, sorry, I was trying to open the report. And also we made our own recommendations with the Open Science Policy Platform. We made some recommendations that they were stakeholder based, because the Open Science Policy Platform, I'm not representing there Spain, I'm representing generally the Young European Research University Network, which is one of the stakeholders with the European University Association, with LERU, with the LIBER, which is the European Libraries Association, with the publishers, with other stakeholders. We are a stakeholder, a representative group of people. But what we did was recommendations for our stakeholders. If you are a library related to rewards and incentives, you can do this. If you are a university related with fair data, you can do this. But we also have, and I was just recovering this in my memory yesterday when I was thinking about the member states, the national perception, the Turkish perception, the French perception, the Spanish perception, what is what I'm going to talk about. We mentioned also recommendations for the member states. For example, we recommend to appoint a national coordinator, a person that is the particular representative that leads the process of open science in a country. In the 21st of November in Helsinki, they have created the network of national coordinators. Actually, nowadays, there are only 5 countries that they have a full-fledged open science policy with a coordinator. Finland, Switzerland, France, Netherlands, and Ireland. Those people are the key people that they create this network of coordinators. But even if you don't have a full-fledged policy, you can have a coordinator of the activities. That is the right interlocutor with the others to align the member states' policy. Why is this so important? Because even when we want to do a lot of things at a stakeholder level, we bump always in the national policy. For example, I can make a group of researchers, including Turkish researchers. We have the same interest. We can do a plan to convert our research in open science, blah, blah. But then you bump into your own national system because you want to build a career in your nation, or at least in Europe or in a region. So it's very important the member states, the national boards are aligned with the principles of the new scholarly communication and new open science at European level. And this is also the other framework that we have. This is the Horizon Europe, which is the next work program. That is going to be the open science, a transversal objective. And actually, in the co-design and the co-creation of this new framework program, they mention many times open science. But we have also some practical commitments for implementation from different stakeholders. For example, you heard about Plan S, which is something that several funding agencies, they address a policy to make compulsory the publication of open access, all open access in the publicly funded projects. This is nice, but we can talk for hours about Plan S. But what is really valuable is that it's a real commitment. I'm a founder, what can I do for open science? I'm a faculty member, what can I do for open science? And the founders, they do what they think they can do, which is asking for that. But anyhow, we are still in among reports and recommendations. And what I really want to have is to embrace all these recommendations, all these reports, and make something practical. And that's why I'm very happy that in the new report finally published last week of indicators, frameworks for fostering open knowledge practices in science and scholarship, they don't have only recommendations. They have also 149 indicators to play with them to apply new ways of measuring science. So this is the first time that we are trying to move the world, and I'm very happy because in the report, Paul Waters, who was the chair of this group, mentioned practical implementation, practical commitments, which is something that we have to do. But what happened is that the real challenges are the building blocks, of the real challenges. And what we are doing is trying to manage a new science where the motivators of work for researchers, for academics, are money, law, and ranking. I'm so sorry to be so honest, I'm a faculty member, I'm an academic, but I apply for grants, I have to follow the rules, and unfortunately, the rankings motivate all the institutional things. But also there is something more important, that is the seduction. We have to make open science the by default, but not in a mandatory way. It has to be by seduction, because it makes you more happy, because it makes science easier. For example, if the EOS is like a wrong, or what I say like WhatsApp that everybody uses, but they don't think about why they use it. Have you ever think about when you use WhatsApp? You do it. That's it. Full stop. It's useful, it's cheap, it's absolutely convenient. Open science should be like that. We have to try to make this seduction framework about making it easy, motivate people, and help them to be open scientists. Because the scientists, we want to do our research. We don't care about all open access. I have a conversation with my vice president of research, and he told me, I have no clear what is green, what is gold, when I can put it, because I do something else. So we have to be very conscious. And here is when the motivators of will meets the PCIs, the practical commitment for implementation. The new regulation, for example, the new European Directive of Public Sector Information, that from June this year is called the Open Data and Public Sector Information Directive, ask the member states specifically to put and support the availability of research data in and adopting national policies in this sense. And also mention fair principles, and mention the open as necessary and close as open as possible and as close as necessary, which is one of the principles of open data. From this moment, when we have legislation, we have to address the open data, which is one of the branches of the open science. Still, for researchers, it's more important open access, because the publications is our key issue. I would love to have the data at the same level as the publication, so I can convince my researchers to share the data, but they tell me, why for? Nobody will, it's a lot of work, and nobody will give me any credit for that. So that's why we are working on that. And this is the layers that we have to tackle for make this cultural change happen. Make it required, a policy, make it rewarding, make it normative, make it easy, and make it possible. Here, it is the seduction, the law, and also the motivation. It could be money, or it could be something else. And I think that Brian Nosek from Open Science Framework is an inspiration always in this. What are we doing in Spain? As I told you, there are countries, particularly 5. I just took the example of the French one because it was yesterday in Paris. They have complete open science policy. Means a commitment, and it's very fine because the French one, they mention commitment, commitments, and commitments. But also, there is no policies without a funding. You can't, if you don't have a funding, if you don't have money to implement the policy, a policy is just a bunch of nice ideas or a bunch of declarations again. So what makes a policy a practical commitment for implementation is what you have to invest in changing this thing. In Spain, we have a very, very shy national plan for research and development, in my opinion, because they say that they will deposit all the publications in the open access repositories, which is fine, sorry. But then they say that they can or cannot include the data of research. That's why I say that it's a very shy policy from the motivator of the money, because this is the plan for making Spanish-funded research. And also, we don't have a policy yet. It was very funny because this is a conversation in Spanish. I don't pretend that they translate Spanish to English then to Turkish, but it was something that a guy from the FECIT mentioned in Twitter that the new Ministry of Spain of Science at that moment, he mentioned the key policies of the new policy of Spain. And I say, what a pity that he didn't mention in the priorities open science. And he said, yes, he mentioned it. Look, he sent to me the slide of the ministry. It is on the slides, but we don't have a policy. It is on the slides, it's not the same thing. If you don't have a budget, it's just on the slides. It's on the slides of the ministry. But FECIT, which is the Spanish Foundation of Science and Technology, they are taking the lead on making things happen, and they have a strategic plan on how to motivate innovation and open science and make it global, and also on pushing the open access to the scientific information. And in this strategic planning, which is also in Spanish, one of the main issues is promoting open science. And that's why, in the context of FECIT, in the Spanish Foundation of Science and Technology, they have created what is called COS, Commission for Open Science. It's the same in Spanish. And includes experts. I'm there as an expert, not as a researcher. It includes experts in intellectual property rights, which is a key issue too. Representatives from university libraries, representatives from Spanish Research Funding Agency, representatives from the researchers, representatives from the accreditation of the career. So they are the key people there that we have, the advocates, we have to convince the real policy makers to make things happen. For example, only my personal battle is if they include one sentence, only one sentence, in the evaluation of researchers that they say, all the publications should be deposited in the repository, or should be, and two of them, open access. Do not explain how to do it, and the people ask me, and how are the researchers going to know that? And I say, if you put it in the regulation, they will figure out. Because they figured out what was the journal impact factor. So they can figure out what is open access. This is the reality. And also in the Conference of Rectors, the PRUE, we have created also another working group, that I'm part of that working group. I just speak myself all the time. And in this working group, I also told them not to make another declaration, don't make another statement, because we have plenty of statements. So we create this working group with a variety of people involved in different institutions and different working groups. And we create 10 commitments, declarations, actions for a Spanish university in February last year. And these commitments are things that we really can do. What can we do the universities? The universities, we cannot change the whole policy, but the universities can help. For example, motivating people to make a new policy, motivating the researchers with the internal mechanisms of rewards of the university, motivating them to have to change the behavior. And also, we are very committed on analyzing where we are. For example, something that we discovered that is very, very difficult, I don't know how it is in Turkey, but in Spain it's very difficult to find out how much we pay in APCs, in article processing charges, how much every university pays, because sometimes the money comes from a research project, sometimes from a department, sometimes from the library, sometimes from the researcher themselves. It's very difficult to know the landscape where we stand for, to change it. But the point is that Spain is not, it has not yet a full-fledged policy. It has the will to make it happen. FECIT is working with the key elements of touching. It's not about talking to the libraries, because I'm a librarian and I say, I don't need to convince the librarians. We all are convincing. So we need to convince the politicians, the people that they don't know, what is the impact factor, that the impact factor is mathematically incorrect, that the impact factor is a pre-technological thing that we always pay also for accessing the figures. And the most amazing thing about these indicators is that we believe it. Every time that I have to apply for my research performance, and I look in Clarivate and they say, this journal has a fee, blah, 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 and I put it in my CV, and I believe it. Why? We cannot make a believable system based on a multi-sector, a multi-indicator approach based on open science. So this is what we are working now, trying to convince people that we cannot blame the agencies that use the impact factor if we don't give them another option. But we are working, but we have still a long road to go. I hope you can join us in this path. Thank you very much.